As you know, the governments of Australia and Papua New Guinea signed an updated Memorandum of Understanding on Saturday to allow regional processing to occur on Manus Island. The next step will be for Australian Defence Force personnel to deploy. This will consist initially of 30 Australian Defence Force personnel and 2 Department of Immigration staff who will be deployed on a C-130 aircraft. I envisage this happening in the coming days. Secondly, I'd like to deal with Nauru. Early this morning, I signed the instrument designating Nauru as a country for regional processing. Copies of the designation and my statement of reasons for doing so are being made public as we speak. After question time today, I'll be moving a motion in the House of Representatives explicitly authorising that designation. I envisage a similar process occurring in the Senate and for that to be progressed today and tomorrow. I'm also announcing today that the government is contracting Transfield Services to provide the services in relation to the initial facility on Nauru. This will include catering, cleaning, security, transport and facilities. I'm also announcing that IHMS, who provides our medical support across our existing detention network, is also being contracted to provide medical support on Nauru. This will also, of course, include mental health provision. I'm also pleased to announce that the government is contracting the Salvation Army for the provision of support services to people accommodated on Nauru. This will include case management, community liaison programs and activities. I'd like to thank the Salvation Army for their very positive interaction with myself personally and with the government and my department in relation to making sure that the services they can provide on Nauru will be of assistance to the people accommodated on Nauru and the broader Nauruan community. There are currently, as I understand it, around 10 Salvation Army personnel on Nauru and they are moving to deploy more people to Nauru before Friday. The operation of these 3 contracts will be jointly overseen by the governments of Australia and Nauru. Obviously, extensive planning has been occurring in relation to the transfer of people from Australia to Nauru. The governments of Australia and Nauru have been working towards a transfer to occur in the latter part of this week. Of course, after the parliamentary approval process is completed, I'll then be making further announcements about logistical arrangements, but the very detailed work that has gone into arranging these transfers will continue, and the government continues to work towards a transfer in the latter part of this week. Over to you for questions. Mr Curry.
The opposition has been critical. They've said John Howard managed to get the first people to Nauru within 19 days, and you've taken longer. Can you explain why it has taken longer, what your answer is?
Well, firstly, in relation to the opposition, let me remind you, the opposition, to great fanfare, made an announcement in February this year that they would have Nauru up and running with 350 beds within 3 months. 3 months they said it would take them to get it running, and yet they criticised me for taking a month to get this up and running. So I think we can take that criticism with a grain of salt. Secondly, of course, we have been engaging in very extensive preparations, both logistically and making sure we are on very strong legal ground, given the litigious nature of this area. And we've been working very closely with our lawyers to make sure that all the necessary arrangements have been in place. Mr Morrison asked me to designate Nauru as a regional processing centre, which I'm obliged under the Act to do, taking into account assurances received before those assurances had been received. Frankly, I don't take the criticism from him very seriously. Mr Yulman.
Just on the legal ground, are you sure that there is no other channel by which people could challenge this legally? Could there possibly be any kind of injunction on this?
Well, Chris, as you know, and as I say, this is a very litigious area, and we've all been around this track once or twice in this room and elsewhere. I'm sure that lawyers on both sides will be examining their options. Our obligation is to make sure that our case is on as strong ground as possible. That's what we've been doing. Ms Curtis.
Is it your intention to transfer all the people who've arrived since the 13th of August to Nauru and Manus Island?
Well, our position has been made clear in relation to the risk they run. Obviously, there are challenges here, just as there would be challenges for anybody implementing this arrangement, as there were last time when 1,500 people arrived in the weeks following the opening of Nauru by the previous government. Our position has been made clear. Of course, I provide further operational updates as we go. Our position is clear. Mr Bongiorno.
Yeah, Minister, the Salvation Army, last time I looked, were Christian. Has there been any thought given to using Muslim charities?
Well, let's be clear. The Salvation Army is not there to proselytise. They're there to provide services, as they do across Australia on a daily basis, to people of all faiths and backgrounds. There is, of course, provision made for appropriate worship at the centre. I have full confidence in the Salvation Army's ability to provide services without fear or favour to religious background.
Minister,
David.
just getting back to Lyndall's question about who goes of the 1,700 roughly that have arrived since you announced this policy. It is essentially a lottery, isn't it? Those who are going to be let into Australia and given refugee visas here, and those that will be sent to Nauru and Mount Asylum.
Well, I wouldn't use that descriptor, David.
How do you make the decision?
Well, David, let's be clear. We have said that people should work on the basis they'll be transferred to a regional processing country if they arrive after the 13th of August. I am not going to provide people smugglers with a loophole or a selling point in relation to that. Now, of course, there are challenges in implementing this policy, but our determination is very clear, and you will see that playing out with the transfers to Nauru and Papua New Guinea, Nauru in the first instance. We're working towards the latter part of this week. And of course, any further operational announcements that need to be made will be made by me. I dare say, I'd lay money on me standing before you again in the course of the coming days and the period after that.
Just on the legal status issue, the legal status of people that we've intercepted or Australia's intercepted at water, and the legal status of people who have been intercepted and then transferred to Christmas Island or wherever else. Is there any difference in their legal status?
No. No, anybody who's an offshore entry person under the descriptor of the Act, that means they were intercepted in an offshore place, an excise place, under the Migration Act, regardless of whether wherever they're accommodated after that, whether it be the mainland or Christmas Island, their legal basis doesn't change.
So it won't make any difference from your perspective as to whether people are sent direct from Christmas Island to Nauru or direct from a ship and taken straight.
Well, I know what you're referring to there, Andrew. You're referring to Mr Morrison's comments this morning. He might like to explain how he's going to transmogrify people from the high seas over to Nauru. We are implementing this policy practically, and that involves transfers from Christmas Island to Nauru in this instance.
Minister,
Alexandra.
last time you had, when you had Malaysia and you had a deal in place, or you were going to have a deal in place, you did the same sort of thing, retrospectively saying anybody who seeks to arrive after a certain date will end up running the risk of going to Malaysia. In the end, you did that twice, and you had to. They ended up staying on Christmas Island and the retrospectivity disappeared. Is that going to happen this time around?
Well, it wasn't so much about retrospectivity with respect in that case, Alex. We had a High Court case which changed the entire arrangement in relation to Malaysia. The statements I've made in relation to people running the risk are clear, and as will be evidenced by the fact that people who will be transferred to Nauru, and we're working towards later this week, will be people who arrived after the 13th of August.
Minister,
Sorry, we'll go at the back first and then over to Mark, yes.
Transport Services is a global engineering firm. It's not a firm that specialises in processing. What makes you think they can do this job?
Well, I have full confidence in Transfield Services. The department has been engaged with a number of potential providers. Transfield Services, in the view of my department, has come out as the best possible value for money provider. They have a wide range of experience, not just in engineering. They do a lot of work across the world in service provision. That's why they're called Transfield Services. So I have full confidence in them. I said I'd go to Mark.
Minister, do you have a dollar figure for the contracts, one? And two, are you any closer to any detail on how the no advantage test will work? In other words, how long the people will stay?
I do have some figures in relation to the contracts. In relation to the IHMS contract, the indication is $22 million for the first 6 months. In relation to the Transfield Services contract, that is $24.5 million for the first 6 months. The second part of your question went to the permanent structure. Again, there's a lot of work going into the planning and costings of the permanent structure on Nauru. Again, I would provide further updates. I'm providing those as regularly and as an open way as I can, bearing in mind it is a complex task. Laura.
Minister, could I just clarify, how long do you think it will take to get PNG up and...
Well, PNG is obviously, we've got to take this step by step. We had discussions with them about the MOU that had been signed pre-High Court. That then needed to be updated to take into account some of the developments since then. I thank the government of PNG for their cooperation in doing that.